So, hi everyone. My name is Atisha, and I, like many of us, have been working from home for over a year now. Come to think of it, I haven't been to the office at all since the beginning of lockdown. Thinking back, the last year has really transformed almost every aspect of our lives. We've seen dramatic shifts in our jobs, social lives, childcare, education, our eating habits, and even our collective sense of time. Have you ever found yourself wondering, what day is it? Or how is it June already? In a year known for Zoom burnout, PPE scandals, and banana bread recipes, perhaps no other phenomenon will have a more lasting impact than WFH, or work from home. A once much desired novelty to escape the office buzz has now become the norm and the reality of the future. But working from home can come with its own set of distractions, even if you're working alone. Our personal lives have been merged with our professional lives and have somewhat blurred the lines between work and personal time. It has probably all given us our own BBC moment with kids or fur babies interrupting meetings or wanting attention when we're trying to focus. I had been attending online lectures for the last year, and all of them were recorded. Going back and listening to the lectures, almost every time I spoke, I could hear my teething 2-year-old in the background. More than a year in, most of us have developed some sort of routine that we stick to. Maybe make a cup of coffee, then check our emails, or catch up on social media before the workday begins. Can you think of the last time you broke out of this daily routine? Can you remember how you felt when you did this? Pre-COVID, we could break out of our routines a lot more easier than we do now. Maybe there was an accident on the highway, and to avoid traffic, you took a different route to work. Or maybe you went to a different coffee shop and then felt like you were cheating on your regular barista. Breaking out of a routine can make us feel uneasy, or it can be freeing. Don't get me wrong, a routine can be good for simple tasks like getting kids ready for school or bedtime. But if we constantly stick to a routine, our brain is working on autopilot. This means that our brain is running along the same neural paths or schemas that it's learned to work over time. When we do this, we are doing very little to expand or work our brains in any way. An ongoing routine basically requires little thought or conscious processing, things that we can do in our sleep, and it fails to adequately exercise our brains. We're also under an enormous amount of stress. Our brains are wired to be reactionary, and we limit our choices to binary choices when we're under this stress. Distractions combined with the routine or the sameness of every day and the added stress can have a negative impact on our creativity. As designers, we rely heavily on our creativity and our ability to put ideas together in new and useful combinations to solve problems. And creativity is often enhanced when we're exposed to new situations. I want to tell you a little bit about Hayao Miyazaki, who's a Japanese animator and director. He's famously known for the movie Spirited Away, which was one of the highest grossing movies in Japanese history. Miyazaki, throughout his career, made his entire team draw by hand. He directed his movies by rendering even the tiniest of details on paper. As designers, we can appreciate this as much of us start our design process by sketching on paper, even though we have an arsenal of design tools available to us. Studio Ghibli, where Miyazaki worked, is one of the only studios in the world where almost the whole production process is carried out using traditional techniques. Miyazaki, who's now around 80 years old or so, is so passionate about his work that even after he retired, he went back to Studio Ghibli to continue drawing. He could even be found at the studio on a Sunday, sketching away, not wanting to be disturbed by anyone. When Miyazaki draws, he achieves a state of flow, which he greatly enjoys. Many artists might seem reclusive, but what they're actually doing is protecting the time that brings them the most happiness and joy. Albert Einstein, aside from being one of the greatest physicists, was also an amateur musician. He once wrote to his son advising him on piano lessons that his son had been taking. He wrote, "Doing what you love, the way you like to do it, is the way to learn the most. That when you are doing something with such enjoyment that you don't notice that the time passes." When asked, Einstein said that if he hadn't been a physicist, he would have been happy as a musician. When he wasn't focused on physics and mathematics, he would play the violin. He achieved flow by either working on formulas or by playing music. Albert Einstein, even on his deathbed, continued to work, writing down formulas that he hoped would unite all forces in the universe in a single theory. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi describes the state of flow as the pleasure, delight, creativity, and process we are completely immersed in life, when we are completely immersed in life. You can think of it as the feeling you get when you're going for a run and completely lose all sense of time, or maybe when you're playing a game and you're so immersed in defeating the enemy that you don't realize that you've been at it for hours. You are completely immersed in the experience, not thinking about or distracted by anything else. You become part of what you are doing. It's the kind of experience Bruce Lee's quote describes: empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. We all probably know that being in a flow state increases levels of creativity, productivity, and happiness. But research has shown that people who experience flow states have more creative days. So, flow doesn't just heighten creativity in the moment, it heightens it for the long haul. Flow basically trains us to be more creative. There are a few ways in which you can achieve flow while working or doing anything for that matter. Firstly, we need to choose a difficult task, but something that's not too difficult. Everything that we do, for example, any task, our job, or playing a sport, has a specific set of rules associated with it. We need a specific set of skills to follow these rules. If the rules for achieving a task is too basic relative to our skill set, we will likely get bored. On the other hand, if we take on something too difficult in relation to our skill set, we will almost certainly give up and feel frustrated. I think we've all known these feelings. The key is to find a middle ground with a task that's aligned to our abilities with just a little stretch. It's in our nature, in human nature, to feel a sense of achievement when we complete a task. As designers, perhaps we want to learn a new software program when prototyping, or discover new things that a certain tool can do. It's that added extra that will take you out of your comfort zone. However, quite often we're faced with tasks that are boring, yet we still need to complete them. This could be things like doing the dishes or getting to all the admin that's piling up in your inbox. So, how do you get through these tasks? We've all been bored in meetings, and maybe we start doodling to keep ourselves amused. Doodling while in a meeting is one way of adding a layer of complexity to a boring task to make it more enjoyable. Maybe you're doodling right now. Another way to achieve flow is by having clear and concrete objectives. If we think of any video game, the objective is pretty clear: beat the enemy or your own record while following a set of explicitly defined rules. We often find that in organizations, a team's mission or objectives are not always clearly defined or clearly communicated. As a result, employees don't know what their objectives are. We can now look at how do we define objectives by using the compass versus maps analogy. A map can be a great tool to help you reach your destination. When a map is accurate, you can follow your course without much hesitation. But what if the map is wrong? When new roads are built or when there are roadworks in place, you find yourself relying on an outdated set of instructions. Maps in our world can be things such as lengthy requirements documentation or rigid processes that we need to follow. Think about how you and your team approach work or work on a new project in your organization. Do you require detailed step by step instructions and hand holding at each step? This is a map. Do you require a map, or would you rather have a compass that provides you with a clear vision of your destination and equips you and your team with the tools to navigate your own path? A compass requires the user to employ creativity and autonomy to discover their own path. In the fast paced world that we live in, a detailed map may lead you deep into the woods, but a good compass will always take you where you need to go. It's said that we're plagued with an epidemic of multitasking. Concentrating on a single task is another way in which you can achieve a flow state. Picture this: you're listening to a podcast while trying to send an important email. A Teams chat appears from a colleague who has an urgent question. You chat with your colleague and give her the info that she needs. You then decide you'd like a cup of coffee. Half an hour goes by and you've forgotten what that email was all about. We often think that multitasking or combining tasks saves us time. Our brains can take in millions of bits of information but can only process a few dozen per second. When we're saying that we're multitasking, we're actually switching back and forth between tasks very quickly. We end up spending more time and energy between switching tasks that we don't do any of them as well as we should. Research has shown that working on multiple things at once lowers productivity by around 60%. Concentrating on one thing at a time is probably the single most important factor in achieving flow. A few practical tips to concentrate on a single task. Maybe switch your phone to silent or switch it off when you're trying to concentrate on something, or only check your emails at defined times in the day. You can also group tasks that are similar into the same time slot or the same allocated time. Maybe you want to pay a bill while catching up on other admin. Something that I personally use is the Pomodoro technique. This technique uses a timer to break down work into intervals of 25 minutes, separated by breaks of 5 minutes. The idea behind this technique is that time instills in us a sense of urgency. With working from home and the blurred boundaries that we experience, we can sometimes feel like there are endless hours in the workday to get our work done, and then we end up squandering those precious hours on distractions. When following the Pomodoro technique, you know that you only have 25 minutes to make as much progress as you can. You can even focus on a task for, say, 50 minutes and combine a few Pomodoros and then take a longer break at the end. If you think back to when you were a child, you probably had an idea of what you wanted to do when you grow up. I wanted to be a scientist when I grew up. And this came from watching TV shows at the time, like Popular Mechanics for Kids and Bill Nye the Science Guy. Growing up, there were these things that, there were things that I was good at, and there were things that I was not so good at. When I got to high school, I didn't see myself wanting to do physics for a year longer than I had to. If you think back to your childhood, you probably had an idea of what you wanted to do, but your parents or guardians probably had a different idea of what you should do. Basically, something that would ensure that you would make some money and be financially stable. But there's also an element of doing something that the world needs, which is becoming increasingly more important in the world we live in. Ikigai is a Japanese concept which means a reason for being. It considers elements of what you do, what do you love, what you're good at, what can you get paid for, and what does the world need. It's a thing that you live for. To put it in another way, Ikigai is what motivates you to get out of bed every morning. The idea is that if we design our lives around these 4 areas, We will be healthier and happier and wealthier than we've ever been before. So, this is a representation of a person's ikigai. Looking at this diagram, doing something you love and something the world needs is described as your mission. Your mission can be something like volunteering to teach underprivileged children a skill, or volunteering at a shelter. It's something that fulfills a purpose that you have, but you don't get paid for it. When you look at doing something you're good at and something you love, I love baking and I can say that I'm good at it, but not at the level at which it could pay my bills. This is referred to as your passion. If you're good at something and you get paid for it, this is your profession or your job. I think even the Joker would agree. If you're good at something, never do it for free. The last one is something the world needs and something that you get paid for. This is your vocation. A vocation is different from your profession in that it's something outside your profession or something additional that you can get paid for. Someone may be good at singing and they get paid for it, but it's something they do in addition to their profession or their day job. Your ikigai or reason for being can be seen as a balance of these four areas. You can use this diagram to identify the different aspects of your life and find out your reason for being. This could change over time, so it would need to be revisited occasionally. Flow is said to occur when you are experiencing your ikigai in balance. So, flow can be seen as you being in tune with your ikigai or activities that give your life meaning and purpose. Another way to enhance creativity is to expand your network. Research has shown that diverse networks enhance creativity and that knowledge diversity positively correlates with individual creativity. Interacting with people of diverse backgrounds enables us to take in multiple perspectives, and this enhances our creative problem solving ability. There are hundreds of events, meetups, conferences, similar to UX South Africa, which now take place online. And attending some of these can really help you expand your network and enhance your creativity. Have you ever sat at your desk and looked outside and into your garden and thought to yourself that you could get so much more done if you could have a few minutes outside? Nothing beats a breath of fresh air or a long walk if you're struggling to get through the workday. Several studies have found that spending time in nature is a great way to get your creative juices flowing. We spoke earlier about our collective sense of time and that being a problem while we're working from home. When you spend time in nature, you experience a natural shift in how you view time. When you spend time in nature, you tend to feel a sense of awe, as though time is expanding instead of feeling pressured by time, or the lack of time that we experience if we're sitting at our desks all day. People enjoy a sense of time abundance when they're in nature, and this helps you to slow down and find the inspiration you're looking for, which will greatly enhance your creativity. If you've tried any of these methods and it's worked for you, or perhaps you've tried something different that has worked to improve your creativity, here are my details if you'd like to get in touch. Thank you.
Atisha, thank you so much for that awesome talk. I always enjoy your slides. I mean, one can easily understand the image. I think many enjoyed the Mortal Kombat one. I see a comment from Seth in Mortal Kombat FTW. Obviously, very passionate. Um, so before we close off, and I'd like to give everyone just a minute or two to add the questions um, to the ask a question component. That's something. I mean, I've learned something new. I never knew about Ikigai, and it's something I'd like to read up a bit more about. Sorry, it sounds very very interesting. How have you? I mean, how long have you been practicing Ikigai? I guess, or implementing and not practicing, implementing it into your lifestyle. Because I mean, it's not only your personal but your professional. You know, did you have to implement different ways in relation to ikigai? That would complement either, or
So for the last year, I've been studying, and this was a concept that I was introduced to by my lecturer, in fact. So she introduced this concept to the class, and it was something that we had to go and apply to our daily lives. I found it
Mhm.
really interesting, and then I read further about it. There's a great book about Ikigai by Hector Garcia, if you want to check that out, and that basically details the whole Ikigai concept and how it started. So basically it's not something that's just relating to your job or your personal life or your career. It talks about living a more holistic life. So the people who follow this concept from Okinawa in Japan, they're actually the longest living people that we have in the world. So they have the most number of centenarians in the world, and they follow these specific ways of life, which basically involves eating in a certain way, working in a certain way. Um, there's so many aspects to the concept of ikigai, and this is just a small piece of it. So if you really want to learn more about it, I would recommend that book to you. I've been, I think, at it for about 6 months now. When I first was introduced to the concept, I took the diagram and wrote down the different things that I was interested in and the things that apply to my life, and that's how I've been basically following the practice.
Awesome. Have you seen any huge or fundamental changes that ikigai has affected, or what kind of changes have you seen?
So I think time management, which was always a problem, especially when we first got into lockdown, because I had, well, my son was 2 then, now he's 3, and having someone who's, working from home, and when we were like in the very strict lockdown, it was very difficult to manage time because he wasn't at school and we were working from home. So having that Pomodoro technique or implementing that where I spend 25 minutes of focus and 25 minutes on a task, even our meetings have been cut down to 25 minutes with that 5 minutes to reset or 5 minutes of break to actually reset and do something else before you get into the zone again.
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely something I want to look into and explore. We've got a question here from Candace. How do you feel about listening to music while you work?
I think it's a great idea if you want to add that extra layer of complexity, like if you were doodling while listening to this talk, or if you doodle while you're in a meeting, music would give you that added layer of complexity that you need.
Okay. Uh, Thank you. It doesn't seem like there's any more questions, uh, but definitely many comments. Very interesting, super helpful tips after struggle with feelings of isolation and loss of motivation. I'll try these tips. That's from Tyler. Awesome stuff. Jared also advocating for it. So thank you so much, Atisha.
Thank you.
If there are any questions from anyone or you'd like to reach out to Atisha, she's on Twitter. I think it's Atisha D. Is that
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And um, if you'd like some more information and you'd like us to connect you, please reach out.